God, most gracious, most merciful. All praise is due to God, Lord of the universe, and may His peace and blessings be upon all of His prophets and messengers, including His final and beloved messenger, the seal of the prophets, Muhammad, and his purified household and righteous companions. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The history of Imami Shiaism has been colored by the existence of generations of notable families that have contributed to its development and progress over the centuries and into the contemporary period. Despite their differences in geographic location, language, and even political, legal, or theological views, all of these families share in common their love for and commitment to the teachings of the purified family of the Holy Prophet, the Ahlulbayt, peace be upon them. This episode of the Makers of the Shia World will focus on one of the most important families in the history of Imami thought, the Nawbakhtis, also known as Banu-Nawbakht. What is interesting to note here is that despite the great amount of scholarship that has been produced in both the Muslim world and in Western academia, the Nawbakhtis and their outstanding accomplishments remain largely unaccounted for, except for fragmented pieces of scholarship. Sometimes those are unpublished as well. A major exception to this is a monograph produced by Abbas Iqbal, first published in 1932 in Persian, entitled Nawbakhti, or the Nawbakhti family, which has recently been translated to Arabic as well under the title al-Nawbakhт. While a complete survey of the members of this illustrious family and their intellectual, social, and political output is far greater than the scope of this episode, I'd like to focus our discussion on three preeminent members of this family. They are, number one, Abu Saleh Ismail ibn Ali Nawbakhti, who died in the year 311 after hijra, or 924 of the Common Era. The second is Abu Saleh's nephew, Abu Muhammad al-Hassan ibn Musa Nawbakhti, who died sometime between the years 300 to 316 after hijra, or 912 to 928 of the Common Era. And the third is Abul Qasim al-Hussein ibn Ruh al-Nawbakhti, who died in 326 after hijra, or 938 of the Common Era. Focusing on these three preeminent Nawbakhtis will show us the great extent to which this family influenced the development of Shiaism in its various aspects during its early period. But before we discuss these specific individuals, it is instructive to provide a brief historical overview of the family and its origins. Historians have noted that the patriarch of the Nawbakhtis was a man by the name of Nawbakht, which in Persian means new fortune. Nawbakht was an astrologist who lived in Baghdad and gained prominence during the time of the second Abbasid caliph, al-Mansour, who reigned from the year 136 to 158 after hijra, or 754 to 775 of the Common Era. Originally a Zoroastrian, Nawbakht is reported to have converted to Islam and foretold to al-Mansour his ascension to the throne, while also drawing the horoscope of the city of Baghdad, which al-Mansour would build as the capital of the Abbasid Empire. This placed Nawbakht in great favor with al-Mansour, the latter granting him a lot of property in Baghdad. The Nawbakhtis claimed descent from Gil, the son of Godars, who is mentioned in the Shahnameh, the famous Persian epic composed by Ferdowsi, the Book of Kings. Nawbakht's descendants were many, and they were known for their scholarly, political, and cultural output. Many of them were theologians, jurists, poets, translators of texts, and political leaders. Pertaining to the context of the development of Imami Shiaism, the most notable family members are the ones whom we'll be discussing now. The first of these is Abu Saleh Ismail ibn Ali, who is the great-great-grandson of Nawbakht, the patriarch. Abu Saleh Nawbakhti is primarily known for his role as an Imami theologian. That is to say, despite his political roles and his scholarly interests and production in poetry and other intellectual areas, His biggest impact was in the realm of theology. Abu Sahl was born in the year 237 after Hijra, or 851 or 52 of the Common Era, that is, during the life of the 10th Imam Ali al-Hadi. His life would extend into that of the 11th Imam al-Hasan al-Askari and into the period known as the minor occultation of the 12th Imam, al-Ghayba al-Sughra. This later period of the Imams was marked by severe difficulty for the Imams and their followers. On the one hand, the Imams, and by extension their followers, experienced harsh political repression under the Abbasid regime. On the other hand, internal challenges within the Imami community threatened its stability. This point is especially evident in the reports of the various factions that arose after the death of the 11th Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. One major source of relief and stability was expressed through the magnificent efforts of Abu Saleh Nawbakhti, who had acquired a prominent position of leadership in the Imami community in Baghdad at the time. The master of the theologians, or Sheikh al-Mutakallimin, as he would come to be known, Abu Sahl is reported to have composed over 40 works. Unfortunately, virtually all of these works are not extant. However, other major scholars have referred to some of the titles of his works and his views, and have related parts of his books in their own books, which have survived until today. The titles of Abu Sahl's works and his related opinions reveal that he focused his scholarly efforts on two main areas. The first area was his defense of major Imami doctrines and teachings of the Imams through what is known as dialectical or systematic theology, al-Qalam. Kalam, which literally means speech, was a discipline that was developed over the course of the early Islamic period and employed by various theologians and schools of thought in order to arrive at a systematic understanding of and belief in the existence of God, God's attributes, and other important doctrines. Essentially, Kalam focused on presenting doctrines in a logical and consistent manner, so as to be acceptable to the opposing party. Abu Sahl employed Kalam not only to promote Imami teachings, but also to counter accusations against the Imamis by their opponents. The Imami Shi'is had been accused by their opponents of adopting various problematic doctrines, such as the belief in the possibility of physically seeing God, and more generally in anthropomorphism, or the attribution of either human characteristics or what are known as accidents, such as shape, color, size, and motion to God. Abu Sahl employed systematic theology to refute these allegations and instead promote the teachings of the Imams on these and other similar subjects. The second area was his focus on the elaboration and defense of the doctrine of the Imamah itself. Of course, the Imams and their companions had discussed various aspects of this doctrine in their oral and written reports. However, Abu Sahl was able to masterfully systematize the proof of the necessity of the Imamah through dialectical theology. That is to say, in addition to textual proof, Abu Sahl was able to develop rational proof for the necessity and the validity of the Imamah. Part of Abu Sahl's important role as a theologian in this regard was his focus on solidifying the doctrine of the occultation, or the ghayba, of the 12th Imam. In fact, Abu Sahl spent most of his time during the minor occultation, since he was about 23 years old at the time of the death of the 11th Imam and the beginning of the occultation of the 12th Imam. Among the titles of some of his works on the doctrine of the Imamah are 1. Kitab al-Tanbih, which appears to have been accessible to scholars such as Sheikh al-Saduq and Sheikh al-Najashi and al-Tusi. Kitab Rad al-Ghulat, which was a refutation of the beliefs of the theological extremists among the Shi'is, those who held extreme views about the nature and roles of the Imams. And Kitab al-Anwar fi Tarikh al-A'imma, which seems to have been a work on the history of the Imams. Among the interesting reports of Abu Sahl's activities with regard to defending the doctrine of the Imamah was his debates with the well-known Sufi mystic al-Hallaj, who reportedly had claimed to be the deputy of the 12th Imam. Abu Sahl died in the month of Shawwal in the year 311 after hijra, or 924 CE, at the age of 74. The second member of this family is Abu Muhammad al-Hasan ibn Musa, Abu Sahl's nephew, that is to say his sister's brother. Like his uncle, Abu Sahl, Abu Muhammad Nawbakhti was also widely recognized as an outstanding scholar and theologian. Unfortunately, the various biographical works do not provide us with much detailed information about his life. However, it may be inferred from the names and births and death dates of some of his contemporaries that Abu Muhammad was born in the middle of the 3rd Islamic century, or the 9th century CE, in Baghdad. We are told that he studied closely with his uncle Abu Sahl and that he had philosophical leanings. He was a very well-known and respected scholar. Other scholars would often visit him and attend his gatherings in order to debate various topics and benefit from his wisdom and insights. Abu Muhammad was a prolific author who authored over 40 recorded works. The titles of his numerous works suggest that he often debated with other theologians belonging to various schools of thought about a variety of theological doctrines and issues. Like his uncle Abu Sahl, however, Abu Muhammad's works have not survived. The only exception is a major work entitled Kitab Firaq al-Shia. This work was first published in Arabic in 1931 by the German Orientalist Helmut Ritter, and then again with an introduction by Sayyid Hibatuddin al-Shahristani, and since then has been translated into several languages, including recently to English by Abbas Iqbal. As its name relates, Firaq al-Shia is a doxographical work. That is to say, it is a book that provides information about the doctrines and the belief system of the various groups, various Shia groups and sects. As he notes in his introduction to this work, Abu Muhammad's concern is with relating the differences of opinion of the diverse groups that arose after the death of the Prophet Muhammad concerning the succession to the Prophet and the leadership of the Muslim community. After proceeding with a historical account of the various schisms that following the death of the Prophet, Abu Muhammad focuses his attention on the various groups that arose within the Shi'is. That is, those who believed in the authority of Al-Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib as the rightful heir and successor of the Prophet. He traces the historical roots of each of the subsects up to his own time, including the 14 different groups that arose after the death of the 11th Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. The significance of this work for understanding the history and development of Shi'ism cannot be overstated. It has been referred to by many scholars following Abu Muhammad from among the Shi'is as well as others. More importantly, Abu Muhammad's work gives us insight into the difficulty that the Shi'i community faced in its early development all the way until the time of the occultation of the 12th Imam, in the middle of the 3rd Islamic century or the 9th century CE. Through his work, Abu Muhammad was able to not only give an account of the various opinions of the Shia subsects, but also to affirm the truth of belief in the position of the Imamis, or the Imamiyya or Ithna Ashariya, who maintained the authority of the 12 Imams after the Prophet. Abu Muhammad Nawbakhti is reported to have died in Baghdad in the early part of the 4th Islamic century or the 10th century CE, sometime between 300 and 316 after Hijra, or 912 to 928 of the Common Era. The third and final member of the Nawbakhti family who we'll be discussing is Abul Qasim al-Hussein ibn Ruh. Abul Qasim al-Nawbakhti is best known for his leadership position within the Imami community. As it is well known, the Imami Shi'is consider him to be the third among four exclusive agents or deputies, wukala or sufara, of the 12th Imam al-Mahdi during the period of the minor occultation, which lasted for approximately 69 years from the year 260 to the year 329 after Hijra, or 874 to 941 of the Common Era. The exclusive deputies of the Imam were responsible for being the points of connection between the hidden Imam and his followers. The Imam's followers would submit questions to the Imam and receive their answers through his deputies. They would also present the Imam's deputies with their alms and other financial contributions, who would then deliver the funds to the Imam, or distribute them as necessary. Abul Qasim, like Abu Muhammad Nawbakhti, belonged to the family through his mother's side. While it is not known when and where he was born, historians note that Abul Qasim was most likely either originally from Qom or may have resided there for some time, eventually migrating or returning to Baghdad. There is some disagreement between scholars as to whether Abul Qasim Nawbakhti was a companion of the 11th Imam or not. At any rate, we may assume that had he been a companion of the 11th Imam, he would most likely have been relatively young while the Imam was still alive, since the time between the Imam's death and his own death is approximately 66 years. What we are sure of is that he was a very close friend and entrusted by the second deputy of the 12th Imam, serving as one of his close advisors and representatives, and of course entrusted by the 12th Imam himself. Abul Qasim was introduced as the third deputy of the 12th Imam al-Mahdi by the second deputy, Abu Ja'far Muhammad ibn Uthman al-Amri, before his death in the year 304 or 305 after Hijra, 916 to 918 of the Common Era. Historians note that Abul Qasim al-Nawbakhti's tenure as the exclusive deputy of the 12th Imam started off with widespread acceptance and without much concern. He was especially respected in the Imami community and also within the political establishment of the Abbasids. However, after a few years, Abul Qasim faced a few problems that eventually led to his imprisonment by the Abbasid government for approximately 5 years, from the years 312 to 317 after Hijra, or 925 to 929 CE. Before his imprisonment, we are told that Abul Qasim went into a brief period of hiding. We are not entirely sure why he went into hiding and for exactly how long. However, what we know is that Abul Qasim had appointed a man by the name of Muhammad ibn Ali al-Shalmaghani as his representative during this period. Al-Shalmaghani was initially known to be a very knowledgeable Imami scholar. However, after being appointed as the representative of Abul Qasim during the latter's brief period of hiding, Al-Shalmaghani seems to have begun calling people to himself, eventually claiming prophethood and divinity for himself. Al-Shalmaghani's rebellion led Abul Qasim, while in prison, to dismiss him from his post and to proclaim him as a heretic. At any rate, after his release from prison, Abul Qasim would continue to serve as a highly respected deputy of the Imam, totaling approximately 21 years until his death on the 18th of Sha'ban in the year 326 after Hijra, or 928 CE. He is buried in Baghdad. This brief discussion on the three prominent members of the Nawbakhti family reveals to us their tremendous significance in the early development of Imami Shiaism, especially as it relates to the intellectual, social, and political growth. Through the magnificent scholarly and political activities of the Nawbakhtis, the Imami community was able to largely overcome an especially difficult period of time and instability, paving the way for further development and progress in subsequent centuries. Please join us next time for another episode of The Makers of the Shi'i World. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.